These children didn't have any fault, any blame in any of the reason that they were removed. It's not the children's fault. The adults do things that are not acceptable, not appropriate, and the children shouldn't have to suffer any more than absolutely necessary.
Devereux has been providing residential treatment for children in Texas for almost 50 years. There was a need to expand our programming out into the community and go into the foster care.
Devereux has a philosophy and kind of a history of taking on some of the more difficult kind of children for care, both in residential treatment and in foster care. The foster families are very different from what I initially thought foster families were going to be like when I first came involved in the foster care program. They're very committed to these kids. They believe that children deserve something better than what they came from, and that they can provide that kind of nurturing and caring environment in their home.
I had worked at Devereux before. I found out that they were opening up the foster care area.
And we were hearing these stories from all the San Antonio News, all of the children that were abused and neglected.
We kept thinking, oh my gosh, those poor kids, that could be our grandson, that could be our grandson, that could be, my nephew, that could be my nieces, you just start thinking these things sometimes. When I started saying somebody should do something, I caught myself as I was saying that. Morris Dye in the church that we were attending had said one time to me, he said, if you feel like somebody should do something, that's God telling you that you are that somebody.
She had to work on me for a pretty good while. Yeah. Hadn't been around kids much, I think, was probably the biggest problem on it.
He's never had any children of his own, so.
The Nelsons are just everyday mom and dad kind of people. She is a teacher and has a real interest in children in general. They've raised their own family and then decided for whatever reason that their calling was to take on another family and provide something for kids that these particular kids would not normally receive, which is a loving home in a nurturing environment.
You couldn't find a more perfect fit to be a foster family than the Nelsons. Susan has a background in special education, has worked with these kinds of kids pretty much her whole adult life. Chris has got a heart as big as the barn that he's got out on his ranch, and they just really care and are very special people.
I got a phone call and they said they had a sibling group of 2, and they said, I said, okay, what are the ages? They said 12 months and 2 days, and I said, wait a minute, are you telling me you've got a 2-day-old baby to place? And they said, yeah, we do. We only picked up the baby from the hospital, which was Nathaniel. We picked him, he was 2 days old, being released from the hospital. Mom had been in an accident. She was 7 months pregnant with Nathaniel, and wasn't cooperating. She tested positive for several drugs, and they removed Javi from her, and he was 12 months old. When they removed him, he spent 2 months in the children's shelter. So he was actually 14 months old when we got him. And during that 2-month time is when she ended up having Nathaniel. What did you think?
I don't remember exactly, I just remember he was awful small.
They wanted to give it a shot and brought these 2 little boys in who came from a neglectful background, and I think their hearts just fell open for these little boys.
My heart broke for the mother, the biological mother. She was standing there and we talked to her for a little bit. She was crying her eyes out. The caseworker said, yes, she's going to be getting them back. They're not going to be staying with y'all. Just, don't get your hearts broken or anything. And that was the way it was from the very beginning. I kept telling her, I said, we will take care of your baby. We will make sure that he's okay. We will take care of him. I'm a grandparent. I'm a mother. We will take care of your baby. We will. You just do what you have to do to get your babies back.
The first time the Nelsons brought them into the door, they were rambunctious, very vivacious, full of pep and energy, typical little boys. And you could see very quickly the love and the care that Chris and Susan had for these two little boys. Even though you can tell that they're of a different ethnic origin than Chris and Susan, they're very much mom and dad. And those little boys love mom and dad really love those two little boys. You can tell that the older brother's looking out for the little brother, and the little brother's looking out for ways to have the older brother take care of him.
Went on. The mama was not cooperating with her service plan, and it just kept on, and they stayed with us longer and longer and longer, and our hopes started getting up then. They would become adoptable. We were getting real attached to them.
Child Protective Services usually puts the biological mom and dad, if there's a dad, on a safety plan. And whatever the issues are in that home, they lay out some criteria and say, you know, in the next 6 months, we want to see that you're going to these classes on anger management because there's been domestic violence in the home, or we need to make sure you test clean for drugs and alcohol. And then if everything goes right, then the judge will say, okay, mom did what she needed to do, or dad did what they needed to do, and the kids get to go back.
They did go to mom for about 2 months, the boys did. And Kenny walked up, the case manager from Devereux, and shook Chris's hand and said, hey, how you doing? And Chris, he says, I know it's pretty rough on you. And Chris goes, yeah, it's hard. And he stopped and looked at me, and I broke up. I couldn't stand it, and I had to take quite a bit of time, and see I'm tearing up now. It took a while to get through losing my boys because they were mine. But you know that's part of the system. You know that's part of what you have to do.
They grow on you. Those kids grow on you. They sure do.
But they came back, you know. And I made it a point. My phone number, my cell number, my work number, his cell number, my daughter's number, I mean, every number I could think of, they come back in the system. I told the caseworker, you call us. We want them back.
The child welfare system in the state of Texas exists only for one purpose, and that is to protect children. And then their objective is to keep them safe and healthy to the point where they can return them to their natural families. In many cases, that's not possible, and the court systems will actually terminate parental rights.
We went up and we were at a merit hearing on the boys, and they were trying to get rights terminated on the boys, and mom decided that she was going to go ahead and relinquish her rights. They came up to us, the assistant district attorney, the supervisor with CPS, met us out in the hallway, and we were kind of listening to them chat and stuff about the case and all. And so they said there was another case called in.
Caseworker and the judge were aware of the fact that they were adopting these two boys, knew that there was a half-sibling young daughter.
They said, would you like another one? And we kind of looked at each other, and I said, a full sibling? And they said, yeah. Well, it'd be even better if it was a little girl. And they said, it is a girl.
You know, I think that it was very heavy on their hearts that they couldn't allow these two little boys to not have the benefit of their little sister.
I felt it was mandatory almost. It was necessary. It was important to say that you're going to walk in and suddenly take a family and say, kids, you're both going to go across town to somebody else or to a totally different town. Think of what happens to these kids. And to keep them together and to keep them familiar, we don't realize what the trauma's like for these kids. Our own kids lose their things. They go into these, dramatic fits about, I've lost this. They get beyond it because of the support. These kids in foster care don't have that support.
The goal is to provide a loving home for kids who have not experienced that. And the ultimate, of course, is for those children to eventually be adopted by a family.
So they took in the little girl, and she quickly became part of that family, and I'm just very happy to report that not too long ago they adopted a little girl as well.
We just showed up with her. Took them to daycare in the morning, went to court, and came back home with the baby. We picked them up. You've got a baby sister.
This family is very happy. The family, not only the mom and the dad, Miss Susan and Chris Nelson, but the kids are.
Chris and Susan Nelson are one of those families. They're very humble. They've taken ownership and responsibility of their heart. We wish we had more families just like them.
The Nelsons have really dedicated to family and doing things as a family and going to church as a family and raising these very special children in a caring and loving environment.
Mm-hmm.
Life is good. It's busy, but it's good. And you know, I think at one point we both looked at each other and said, what else would we be doing with our time? The idea of sitting on your porch and rocking and drinking tea is great, but that gets old after a while. We are buying baby bottles and formula and diapers when most people are out planning what they're going to do for the rest of their retirement.
Well, it's great. We enjoy it. Didn't realize it, what we were missing out on, I guess, until we tried it. And the love of these little children is makes it all worthwhile.